I start over again.
Thank
So
you.
now we have the precious human rebirth. As Shantideva said, we can cross the ocean of samsara, you see. So if you don't use this precious human rebirth, then Shantideva said, you are a fool. Because we are a fool like sleeping in ignorance, you know, the ignorance of the afflictions. So we believe that, and it's time to wake up from that. Because the precious human rebirth has incredible potential. It's always the same, right? Yeah, you see, it's just a tape recorder. Yeah. To play. So incredible potential to achieve good rebirth in the future, liberation, enlightenment. And so there's a great meaning, as we said in the Lamrim. And so it says temporary, ultimate. So, yeah. And also, I didn't say before the recording, but also great meaning every moment. You know, so that every moment we can create causes for those three purposes. You know, the three scopes of Lamrim. And then in particular, state of enlightenment, you know, just refer to the Vajrayana as well, that is possible by this precious human rebirth, which is very precious. From the point of view of the Pratimoksha vow, for example, you know, they can only be established by a human being on this particular planet, you know, not by other beings. Bodhisattva vows can be taken also by certain gods and everything, but the Pratimoksha can only be practiced and taken and been established and generated for human beings on this particular planet, at this particular time. So it's very interesting, you know, that's incredible opportunity. Yeah. So this practice of what we have right now, leading up all the way to enlightenment, yeah. So also the refuge from that point of view, we say we can have a refuge in accordance with the great scope. Yeah. So normally the Lamrim refuge, the first time it comes up is during the small scope, right? So that's why it's been presented in all the Lamrims in that way. Yeah. But generally speaking, of course, as we discussed yesterday in detail, that you can also take refuge according to the middling scope and great scope. Yeah. So then maybe I thought we'd do a small meditation on the refuge with regards to the great scope. Yeah. So that means that we're going to analyze that the three jewels of refuge, you know, have a particular potential, and we're going to analyze what is the cause for looking for that potential, right? So then to see that suffering samsaric beings, yeah, they need a kind of safe direction, right? And how wonderful it would be if we can be a part of that project, or we actually take responsibility ourselves. So then I thought maybe we contemplate that from the point of view exchanging self for others, the faults of the self-cherishing attitude, and then the benefits of cherishing others, right? And then try to take that into the direction of a commitment, you know, because they're so much more in number, and they all, their wish for happiness and not wanting suffering, right, is exactly the same as we have. And we just one, and they much more in number, you know. So how this, yeah, it's just using logic. It's more beneficial to work for their purpose than it is to work for just one, right? So if you think in that way, you try to generate a kind of, you know, this compassion for them, and then think this compassion, which is the substantial cause for Buddhahood, or substantial cause for bodhicitta, yeah. So then after generating this compassion for them, then we have to take responsibility, right? That's kind of the special intention in the 7 cause and effect method. And then you have to check, do I have the capacity right now to do that? And the 7 cause and effect method, that talks about 6 causes and 1 effect. So this special intention of, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take responsibility of freeing migratory beings. You know, just discussed the meaning of droha. You know, transmigrators who go around in samsara without end. In the Madhyamika Avatara, it gives an example of you know, this irrigation kind of wheel with the buckets, you know, scooping the water. So one person is turning it and then scooping the water from a lower part to a higher part, you know, irrigation. So it gives that example and then says, all the sentient beings, it's very easy to go down, because without, just by the power of gravity, the buckets, they go down, right? It's so difficult to put up, because you have to put effort to bring up the water in those buckets. And then those buckets, they go back and forth and hit the stones, and it's kind of the suffering of sentient beings, right? So it's very interesting analogy in the Madhyamaka, to use that as a way to generate compassion for sentient beings. So it's very moving in the beginning of the first chapter, for example, about the need for generate compassion. So, and then after having generated compassion, then we check if we have the capacity to do that or not. You see, at that time, refuge starts to make sense, because then we see, oh, I have to develop myself in order to be a real benefit. If you become a Buddha, you have an all-knowing mind. You've countless emanations. You can talk exactly according to the level of the disciple. You know their minds over many lifetimes, so you can lead them in a very sophisticated way. So I have to accomplish that particular state myself, you see? So that's the refuge of the great scope. So it's meaning in your own future, the resultant refuge of the great scope, I have to become a Buddha. So that leads to bodhicitta. So in order to generate bodhicitta, according to the 7 cause and effect method, or the combination of exchanging self for others and the 7 cause and effect method, eventually this bodhicitta arises upon this kind of refuge in your own resultant Buddhahood, right? Because we know bodhicitta has 2 aspirations. One aspiration is to eliminate the suffering of sentient beings, compassion, and the other aspiration to achieve the state of Buddhahood for that purpose. You see that? So that means that one of those 2 aspirations to achieve Buddhahood for that purpose is a kind of refuge. You see that? It's taking refuge according to the great scope. You see the suffering of sentient beings, you fear that, and you see if you only become liberated yourself and abide in the bliss of nirvana, then those beings missing out. Right? So there's 2 types of fear you generate, and then you want to accomplish the state of enlightenment. And you see, with that potential, that kind of refuge has the potential to help them. You see? So that's kind of, so refuge is a very important, if you really understand refuge well, from this point of view of the resultant aspect, also in the great scope, is very essential. Because that's the only way you move from special intention to bodhicitta, right? The 7 cause and effect method. So that way refuge there is also very important to understand the potential, because that's true, right? Refuge has 2 causes. So in this case, the fear of the suffering of sentient beings. And then it's very difficult to bear if you have real strong compassion. Then to see the potential that the refuge, the jewel of Buddhahood, has this potential, or the Dharma, or the Buddha jewel has this incredible potential to eliminate the suffering. So we take the same direction in that aspect of refuge. So let's try to do meditation. So the structure will be the same as yesterday, and then the analytical meditation will be different from the point of view of contemplating the self-cherishing attitudes, then the faults, of that, and then the benefits of cherishing others. And then we try to move to love and kindness and compassion, and generate a wish or take responsibility to lead them beyond suffering, and then take refuge in the sense of I have to become a fully enlightened being, Sangye, eliminating all faults and all qualities. So give that a try. So when we sit, first we do the breathing, right? Counting the breath as a concentration meditation. And here try to focus and have those 2 mental factors as we just discussed, and try to relate to that these mental factors of alertness and mindfulness are very essential in morality, as we just discussed, as well as in our concentration meditation. And then we do the visualization of Sakyamuni Buddha as described yesterday and before, and then we do the analytical meditation. So first, the counting of the breath. So every in-breath is 1, out-breath is 2, and then breath is 3, and then count from 1 to 10 and start over counting. And make sure you have these 2 mental factors. As soon as the mind gets distracted of the past and the future, then don't pay attention and bring it back with mindfulness. And the only thing you're doing is counting of the breath. Yeah, so let's do that for about a minute or 2. So then when the mind is settled down a bit, then visualize Sakyamuni Buddha in front and surrounding yourself all the sentient beings. Focus upon their suffering. And then while focusing upon their suffering, think, I have to generate bodhicitta in order to help them. You know? And for that purpose, I'm doing this meditation. And for that purpose, I request Sakyamuni Buddha in front. And then the Buddha is very pleased, and from his heart comes white nectar light, crown of your head, fills your whole body. And by this, you purify all negative deeds in general, and eliminate the obstacles, and in particular, the obstacle that stands bodhicitta in the way. So think about this while doing this visualization of this white light from the heart of Sakyamuni Buddha to the crown of your head, and filling your whole body. Yeah, so we do that for about 2 minutes. So then think your whole body is filled with this white nectar light. And then in a similar way, with the same intention, you make request to the Buddha in front, and this time yellow golden nectar light comes and fills your whole body and generates all the potentials for the realizations to come about, and in particular the realization of bodhicitta. Yeah, so do that visualization also for about a minute or 2. So then when you're totally filled with this golden nectar light, and the mind becomes suitable to meditate. And then first of all, we do kind of equanimity according to exchange itself for other methods. So think that like oneself, one's happiness, and it's very strong and very innate. All sentient beings have the same wish. Friend, enemy, stranger, everybody. And like oneself, not only one's happiness, but doesn't like suffering. As soon as suffering comes up, wants to be free from that, or sickness, or whatsoever. Very strong, innate, spontaneous. So all sentient beings have that same wish, exactly the same. friend, enemy, or stranger. So try to contemplate those aspects for about 2-3 minutes, a different reasoning. And then try to contemplate and reason and analyze that the self-cherishing attitude, only thinking about yourself, is a very narrow-sided mind, is a cause for a lot of problems. Very narrow-minded mind, it causes for more afflictions, more disturbance of mind, very difficult to have a social life if you only think about yourself all the time. So try to see the drawbacks of the self-cherishing attitude from different angles for about a minute or two. And then try to contemplate and reason that if you cherish others, then it's easier to have more friends, more social aspects. The mind is much more open. There's much more causes for happiness, you know. So try to see the benefits of cherishing others with reasoning for about a minute or two. And have a short conclusion here that thinks about those 3 points of equanimity, that all sentient beings are equal, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, and seeing that the self-cherishing attitude is only a cause for problems, and cherishing others brings so much great benefit. So take those 3 points and come to a conclusion that from now on it's much more beneficial to cherish others than oneself, and then focus on that conclusion for about a minute. And then think that how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings, who want happiness, if they always abide in happiness, then may they abide in happiness, and I will cause them to abide in happiness. So come to that conclusion, and then focus on that for about a minute. Yeah, and then think that then focusing upon the suffering of all those sentient beings who are now so close to you, think about they're suffering every moment. The suffering of change, and the all pervasive compounding form of suffering. As long as they have afflictions and karma, they have to suffer every split moment, every split second. We'll try to generate compassion from them. Contemplate that also for about a minute or two. And I think they are undergoing these physical and mental sufferings because of these afflictions and karma. I have to do something about it, and I'm going to do something about it. So try to generate a kind of responsibility to free all sentient beings without exception, and then focus on that kind of conclusion for about a minute. And then see without, in order to really be able to do this, in order to eliminate the suffering of others, have to accomplish a state of development, right? So we have to become a Buddha with an all-knowing mind, motivated by spontaneous compassion, spontaneous bodhicitta, the wisdom, spontaneous knowing what to say and what to do to help sentient beings. So we have to become a Buddha for that purpose. So analyze that for about a minute. And then think that I have to go in that direction. I have to take refuge in my own future accomplishment of the state of Buddhahood to be a real benefit of sentient beings. So try to come to that conclusion and then focus upon that kind of resultant refuge for yourself to become a Buddha in the future, and focus on that for about a minute. And then to conclude, then Sakyamuni Buddha, so the crown of your head, and become smaller and smaller, like the size of a thumb, or even smaller than that, and then descends to the crown of your head, and then becomes one with your own mind at the level of your heart. You can feel a little bit of bliss or happy feeling there. All right, I can start with the meditation. So, just also for you to know, I think I explained before that the visualization, as we just did, and Sakyamuni Buddha dissolving into yourself, actually that comes from a true experiential, there are experiential lineages of the Lamrim, according to the outlines, actually, of two important texts, of the swift part and the easy part, sometimes translated as swift part and part of bliss. There's two Lamrim texts by the Panchen Lamas, and there's a kind of master's instruction, it's been called outline of the Lamrim of those two texts. This was the basis for Lama's Ponka Rinpoche's Lamrim, and that carries a kind of experiential kind of lineage. So very, it's very fortunate lineage, and that also there it explains these kind of visualizations, of the white lights and the green, the golden nectar lights, and then dissolving of the Buddha, right? So that aspect comes from the Vajrayana practices, so that's kind of integrated into the Lamrim, because Lamrim by itself is sutra based, because it's a kind of a causal vehicle. Yeah? So it's not those things good to know. That's not made up by Tenzin Namdak or something. It's a kind of authentic source, because that's for us always important to. I'm a very traditional guy, so to say, and I think it's important to be like that, because the authentic lineage we come from, carries great kind of benefits. Like there's a lineage going from generation to generation, and this lineage has been proven to be beneficial. Though, as you know, Buddhism is not something that is that easy to be studied and to put into practice. But when it's been studied and put into practice, then we have these incredible examples. So that's important to know, that these masters are still present. There's still people achieving realizations of the stages of the path. We have seen many examples in the present day of people producing all kind of relics at a time of cremations, or just being with a being like that. Some people just being with His Holiness, or being with one of the lamas, just sitting there, and people change. So that's very interesting. That's from the power of the qualities of the mind, right? We say Sangye. The elimination of it's not only a physical thing, right? Because that's for us the hidden aspect is the qualification of the mind. We don't know, but we see only physical and verbal behaviors. But sometimes, with Rinpoche, I think, some people just came in because Rinpoche didn't speak any English, but people just came and asked, "Can I just sit for 10-15 minutes, Rinpoche?" They didn't, no conversation, and they left, and they were so happy. Said, "Okay, that's enough," and then they go. So that means there's a kind of something happening there, which is scientifically not easily to be put into words, but that's kind of the blessing of these kind of realizations. So when you're near holy objects, or I just explained before the break, like when you have holy objects, and this kind of carries energy, right? So then people say, "Oh, it's quiet, a different quiet," So that's and that kind of blessing, if you're open for that, that can be very beneficial, extremely beneficial. To saturate the mind, our mind. If you you have the water or the nectar of the Dharma, right? And this water or nectar of the Dharma can produce incredible results if you put it into practice in the correct way. And then this kind of faith and blessing, which is based on reasoning, plays an important role. So that's why we do this visualization. If your mind is too tough and there's no faith, it's not blind faith we're talking about here, right? Faith on this reasoning. I said you make offering to the Buddha because you like to acquire the qualification. So if you see Buddha image, which in your eyes looks like, drawing on a piece of paper, or on a tanga, or kind of made out of copper or whatsoever, that's one thing. But if you really have the discriminating factor. This is the Buddha. Then you receive a kind of blessing, you know, and then sometimes a statue can even speak or communicate. Very interesting. When His Holiness came to I mean, there's many stories like that in Dharamsala, in the main temple, or in Gyume Tantric College. The founder of Gyume is Sera Je Monastery. There's kind of a statue of him. You know? And then once His Holiness told, he told everybody to leave. And he was all by himself, and then he was communicating with the statue. Very interesting. So that means for us ordinary beings, oh, it's just a statue made out of gold and copper, and then filled with mantra rolls. You know? But actually, during a consecration ceremony, then all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you know, and different deities are invited to recite or to remain in that particular image. You know? And if you think that Buddhas only became a Buddha for our benefit, and if they just abide somewhere in the Pure Lands without doing anything, then that's not really according to the promise, right? And we cannot see Buddhas. That's the problem, you know, because on the head of every sentient being, there are the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate Eon that we cannot see. So if you have an image of a Buddha and you think that's actually the real Buddha, you know, you get a blessing of the real Buddha. So that's the kind of what we do in these meditations, you know, helps us to transform the mind. Then when the mind transforms in that way, it's so easy to think about these things. So that's why we do these visualizations. If you do that with a lot of faith, it can really transform the mind, even if you don't work too hard. So that's why Kushtila Rinpoche used to say very often that faith, which is based on reasoning, what we just explained, is very essential. So then one of the disciplinarians in Sera once, he explained to all the monks, because among the monks we have like scholars and people just study it because like an academic kind of thing. Then it doesn't really change the mind, you know. There's like, he put an example like, put water on new concrete. That means in India, if you water concrete, then the concrete will become harder. If it's really true or not, I don't know, but everybody does it. So this disciplinary said the same thing. For you guys, it's like, you know, if you don't put it properly into practice, it's like putting water on concrete. It becomes harder and harder. Like a mind that becomes harder and harder without faith, it cannot be bent, right? So then it's nothing possible. So that means that when you do these contemplations with these visualizations, there's a possibility of saturating the mind with the real nectar, that the mind starts to change. So that's, yeah. If you experience to be close to high beings, His Holiness the Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you can see sometimes the mind goes in a particular direction, or you are in holy places, in Gaya, for example, or places that are blessed by meditators. You know, in Dharamsala also there's one retreat room. Rinpoche did a lot of retreat. Just doing retreat there is very easy. You just walk inside that room, and it looks like you walk in a different dimension. You know, afflictions almost don't arise anymore. It's very interesting. You know, so it's easy. It's good to know these kind of aspects. Otherwise, it's just all dry kind of material we study. But because if you have this kind of faith, which is based on reasoning and experience, you know, then things start to move in a particular direction, and then the real understanding of the Dharma comes. So that's why if it's just dry knowledge, then we discuss, and it's okay, yeah, interesting. But if you contemplate in a particular correct way, then it moves the mind and becomes one with your actually behavior, right? And then you start to understand these things much better. You know, that's why it's only says then the real understanding of the Dharma comes with emptiness, etc., etc. Yeah. Anyway, that's just something good to know. That is, from the point of view of putting into practice with contemplation, then we need certain conditions for it to come about. You know. And by the power of this faith, then miracles can happen. It's not only a thing in Buddhism, also in Christianity and other forms of faith. You see that a lot. People really believe a particular aspect, you know, and then things happen, right? So it's the stronger. And in Buddhism, then we try to have a little bit more of the reasoning behind it to generate this faith stronger and stronger. And then that's, yeah, great benefits. Yeah. So people from you who come here to the center here, sometimes you can feel, right? There's text, there's images, there's kind of a different feel than sitting in your living room with a TV set or whatsoever. So it's a kind of different feel, right? You see, it's, yeah, the power of the object, so to say. Yeah. So then, as we discussed, also the power of the object depends on the person having particular intention, right? And then an intention, if it's very positive, then that can generate a kind of virtuous form, according to Vaibhasika and Prasangika schools of Buddhist philosophy. So also the vow of self-liberation, the pratimoksha vow, also generates this kind of subtle form. Yeah, we just talked about the difference of merely not engaging in something negative, or taking a commitment not engage in something negative, right? So that commitment remains for a particular period of time. Yeah, so if you take the Mahayana precepts, that's the easiest way to practice morality for 24 hours. You don't have to commit. With the lay vows, you say from now until I die. Or when you become monk and nun, you say from now until I die. Of course, if things go extremely the wrong direction, it's possible to give back the vows as for monk or nun. But generally speaking, it's kind of one lifetime, because one lifetime is like peanuts, right? Compared to to countless eons. Yeah? So yeah, even sometimes it's difficult and other times, but yeah, it's kind of, that's how it is. Yeah. So yeah, but also for the lay vow, same thing. So that means that talking about the power of the object. Yeah. So the more vows a particular person is carrying, the more kind of promises of virtue are present. So then becomes stronger. So that's why they say a person who abides in the 3 vows and keeps morality of the 3 vows of the pratimoksha and the bodhisattva vows and Vajrayana vows, then becomes kind of superior objects from the point of view of transformation. Yeah. So that's a thing to say. And also the Buddha said, in the future, the morality of the pratimoksha is a teacher. And so put a lot of emphasis on that aspect, because that's the commitment of people to take. So that's my introduction to. I give every year I give a kind of course to new monks and nuns, Westerners, who take ordination with His Holiness. So then I teach them. I mean, we go over subjects for about 20 days, and I always have to talk about these benefits. So it's for me very easy to play that recorder, because I do that every year. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. So and then being with His Holiness, translating for the ordination rituals, His Holiness always gives a lot of very interesting, insightful kind of benefits of these points. Yeah. So the last thing to be discussed today is the vow for the layperson. Yeah. So I'll be very briefly, because it's only meant for those who really want to go the next step. Yeah? So the first step, as we said, is taking refuge, right? And we talked about the advice of the 6 points, just before the break, in order to help us to safeguard ourselves, to keep going in the right direction. That's the meaning of that advice, right? Or commitments. Commitment is a heavy word, but it's actually just a kind of guideline. Yeah? So in a similar way, if you become even more serious, so to say, in Buddhist practice, then also people can commit themselves to take the vows of a layperson, right? Yeah. So that means it's not all that difficult. Also, the vows for monks and nuns is not all that difficult. Compared to bodhisattva and tantric vows, is a bit more difficult to keep. Yeah. So anyway, so the vows for the self-liberation for the layperson is this common sense, a kind of law and order. Do not kill a human being, right? It's kind of, you don't do that in society, right? Yeah. Or steal. That's being considered as a crime, right? Stealing. So people in these cyber crimes, they get all this money and then they boost up on the social media with a plane and a fancy car, and then I saw one of them. He was completely dressed in blue, probably a very kind of expensive kind of how do you say that? Expensive kind of designer, you know. And then his car was also in blue, a very expensive one, in front of a plane. And then he took a photograph of that. So, wow, I'm something. And then they got him because they say, where did your money come from? They checked. He committed cybercrime. See? So stealing has been considered as you know, so not stealing, right? Yeah. Then sexual misconduct. Number 3, don't engage in sexual intercourse with somebody else's partner, you know, without consent. So maybe that's kind of a modern thing. Yeah. So that also is causing problems, right? So yeah, there's also not kind of yeah, there's more to it, but yeah, for the time being, just keep it simple. Then telling lies. You know, don't lie about spiritual attainments. You know, don't say you have realized emptiness while you have not realized emptiness, or you have calm abiding while you have not calm abiding. So it's also not that difficult. And then number 5 is not drinking alcohol. So that's a bit more kind of an issue, especially when you go with this beautiful weather to the parks. You know, you can see now the pubs are open, and you can smell even, you know, because I know from the early days, there's a particular smell coming from the pub. You walk past and there's no terrace. There's one pub here close by. And then we went for a walk, and then, you know, the doors open and you smell the pub smell. So, and the pub smell is based on this particular point, drinking alcohol. So drinking alcohol, why is that a part of it? Because the first 4 is very straightforward, that it causes problems, right? Or not, right? Not killing and etc. So alcohol, the first 4, they, technically speaking, in the Abhidharma, it says they belong to the branch of morality, right? So that's the first 4, because that's, yeah, more or less, you know, negative. That's easy to see, right? Or we say negative by nature. Yeah. And then the 5th one is the branch of conscientiousness. Alcohol, drinking of alcohol is not by nature negative. You see that? But the result from it, if you drink too much, that's the problem. So that means if you drink a little bit, you want to drink more. If you drink more, you want to drink a little bit more. You know, and then you lose conscientiousness. Even now with the coronavirus, they say people drunk, they cannot keep social distancing, right? So that's a danger. You see that? Because you lose conscientiousness. You know, and that's why people who are drunk, then afflictions take over. Some people, the positive emotions come up, and other people, negative emotions come up, and they take over, and that's a problem. You see? So that means that drinking alcohol, if it's too much, then it becomes a problem. So when His Holiness Dalai Lama gives the vows for a layperson to the people, then when he explains the points, and he comes to the last point, and then he said that one Tibetan once came up. It was at the time of Lingrim Rinpoche, one of his own teachers. You know? And then this late Tibetan, they all drink chang, you know, this kind of homemade kind of brew, chang. So then Lingrim Rinpoche was giving these vows, and then one of then said, "Yeah, I can keep rights easy." And then the Tibetans, when they get kind of uncomfortable, they do like this, you know. So so this layperson did it as well, and then Lingam said, "What?" And said, "Yeah, alcohol. I don't know if I can abandon alcohol, you know." And then Lingam said, "As long as you don't get drunk, you know, just a little bit." So His Holiness has the same kind of protocol. Yeah, but you have to be careful, because if you drink a little bit, you want to drink more, right? Yeah, so that's for ordained persons is kind of not a drop, but for lay people, yeah, it's kind of. His Holiness says, yeah, you know, just a little bit, you know, with a meal or something. So you see, it's not all that difficult to keep. That's the vows for the lay vows. Yeah. But anyway, before taking, maybe you have to discuss it a bit more. You know, because yeah, there's more to say. But today is just the introduction of the introduction of it. Yeah, so that you know it's possible in the future. Then before taking, it's important to check certain aspects. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it for today. Perfectly done all the subjects according to, you know, I have this kind of book for the manual for the teacher. That's giving me guidelines what I have to cover. So yeah, I did everything. Yeah, so thank you very much. And if there's any questions regarding these points, then yeah, we can talk about it. or discuss, or not? Any hands? Yeah, a few hands, white hands in a blue square.
So good morning, Geshe. Thank you so much for a wonderful lecture.
All right.
We're all very lucky to have such a wonderful teacher. To have such a wonderful teacher. Oh, I just have a couple of points that I wasn't very clear on. The first point is you were saying, so everybody has a Buddha nature. So in that regard, all human beings are equal.
Mm-hmm.
True, okay. And then the Buddha, is it the Buddha that teaches skillful means? Or is it the Arya that teaches skillful means? Or is it the virtuous friend that teaches skillful means?
All three.
I see, and so skillful means pretty much means speaking to another human being in a way that they can understand.
Yeah, I can understand, and not only that aspect, but skillful means also is based on a particular intention to benefit them, right? So that means that understanding their situation and try to speak on their level and contemplating or knowing the temporary and ultimate benefits, and according to that, talk to them or give them advice. So it's just in order to lead them step by step. Right? That's why the Buddha said, okay, if Buddhahood is too far away, all sentient beings is too difficult for you, then just focus upon liberation from samsara, right? If that's also too difficult for you, then just focus upon precious human rebirth, right? If that's all too difficult for you, then there's universal aspects of Buddhism, of subduing the mind or eliminating destructive emotions. You see that? So when a Buddha or a teacher like His Holiness or other teachers teach, then according to the level of the audience, they will give instructions. And sometimes His Holiness presentation is completely universal or secular. And sometimes it's in-depth Buddhist philosophy, depending on who is sitting in front. Yeah. And then sometimes comments or advice being given according to what is needed to be said and according to know what will you benefit for that particular person.
Sure. So it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's not a good idea to point fingers and say that person isn't doing it with a skillful means. That person, it's just to speak from your own side.
Yeah.
We aren't all knowing, I guess.
So yeah, that's the meaning. If you have an all-knowing mind, then you know exactly what to say and what to do, because you know that person so well, and you know how the person will react and what is possible within the capacity of that person. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next one.
Hello. Hi. Thank you, Geshe-la. My question is about when we recite the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, the first stanza, we recite it 3 times. Is this to do with the 3 jewels?
The first stanza, we recite 3 times. Yeah, that's basically, is mainly referred to the Buddha himself, right?
And why do we do it 3 times?
Because you can also do 1 time or 7 times, or it's not that fixed. If you're in a hurry, you can do 1 time, or just say, I prostrate to the Buddha, and that's it. Yeah, it's just these prayers are meant to train our mind. Yeah, so this prayer of the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, because it's thanks to the kindness of the Buddha that we have these teachings available, right? Mm-hmm. So, and to appreciate his spiritual path, and then to appreciate yourself wanting to go in that direction, then we pay homage to that aspect, right? So it's just a matter of fact to bring us closer So the more you understand the qualities of the Buddha, where it summarizes a little bit, go beyond, right? So transcend destroyer, meaning having eliminated all afflictions, right? The Buddha has eliminated all afflictions. Yeah, so we talked about 4 qualifications of the aspect of the Buddha, right? That he has eliminated all qualifications and being skillful in teaching. Yeah, that doesn't make distinction between those close or are distant, or those who harm or benefit, right? So there's a 4-fold kind of benefit. So that comes from, you contemplate these verses and then oh, this is kind of a real refuge. And I also like to become like that. You see that? That's why and if you recite it 3 times, same as if you take refuge, you recite 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening, right? One of the points of the advice in general to be followed. That's all to help us. Prayers is all to help us to move in a particular direction. Yeah. So sometimes if you say Sangye Cheda Tsongye Tso Namla and you recite once and your mind is not really paying attention, then you recite another 3 times, or you recite it 7 times. Or you recite it until your mind starts to understand what you are doing. You see? So the number is not fixed, but 3 is an auspicious number, or 7 is an auspicious number. So that's been chosen, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But the meaning to do it a few times is to understand these aspects of the object of refuge, to contemplate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in a similar way, when we recite the Foundation of All Good Qualities or the Heart Sutra, if you just recite it because it's a kind of a custom to do that, we do that a lot in a monastery, then then it's not really moving the mind in a particular direction, So there's we're gonna talk about later. There's kind of in the next model. When is that? After the August break, right? The next one, yeah. So then we're gonna do about daily practices and some preliminary practices. So there's a possibility of reciting Vajrasattva 100,000 times, or prostration 100,000 times, or refuge 100,000 times. There's many things we can do. So as a Buddhist, you never get bored, because you can fill, if you're in retreat, you can fill your whole day from early morning till late evening with all kinds of things. Because we humans, we like to do different things. It's true, right? So something new, interesting. So that's skillful means of the Buddha. So that means that. But then if you do, for example, 100,000 times refuge, so 100,000 times Vajrasattva, 100,000 times prostrations, a number is just helping us to later on rejoice. It's going, oh wow, I did this, and that by itself, virtue increases, right? But the real thing is to know what you are doing. There's a story about the retreats of a group of monks during refuge retreat, right? So you can do you can do a month or something and recite 100,000 times. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha, right? And there's different versions, but that's the most simple one. So you can do that 100,000 times. You can do that in 3 weeks or a month, or something like that. Depends how quick you are, or quicker even. So then they did this retreat, and then everybody's finished after 2 weeks, And then one monk, he only did a few hundred. He said, "What? You only a few hundred?" But then the teacher said he did it the correct way, because he was reciting one verse and then contemplating. And then it changed the mind, right? You see? There's another saying. We have a kind of, we recite mantras, in Mala, Om Mani Padme Hum. So if you don't meditate on bodhicitta and emptiness, and subduing your mind, then they say, in Tibetan there's a saying, you do like this, right? Reciting mantra. You move, you can see. So there's a saying, eliminating the nails of your finger, but not the afflictions. So that means, that's not really the practice. Yeah, it's only often referred to that kind of aspect. Yeah, you got it? Yeah. Number is not important, but the meaning behind it. It has to transform us. Lingam Rinpoche, I just mentioned before, but His Holiness mentioned once during ordinations, very inspiring. When Lingam Rinpoche did practice of prayers, when he was halfway through and his mind was distracted, he noticed his mind, he started over again. You see, that's the real attitude. Yeah. So if we do that, then we never stop. We can never stop because we're always distracted. So we keep starting over again. But you have to find a middle way. But you get the message, right? The meaning of yeah, doing these things in a particular way. Yeah. All right. Yeah. One more. Rosa. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. Hi.
Well, you mentioned that you put the text and the Buddha in a certain way or on the altar. What about the Sangha? Is that also placed in the altar?
Very good one. Yeah. So basically, the Sangha, you can have images of you know, traditional speaking, we have images of the real understanding of that is an image of what we call the merit field. You know, you heard about it?
No.
Rosa? No?
No.
So the merit field, sometimes when you do Lama Chopa or something, they have this Tanga. Or you can have a look on internet, just type merit field of the Lamrim or something, or merit field of Lama Chopa. Then something will come up, you know. So in that merit field, everything is represented. You know, there's images of the Buddha, there's images of Arya beings, which is a Sangha. You know, because every Buddha or deity in that merit field is an Arya being, right? That means they're all Sangha jewel. So if you have a Buddha image on your altar, that by itself is representing the Buddha jewel as well as the Sangha jewel. Because the Buddha is an Arya being, right? The Buddha has the true paths and true cessation in his content, right? So that is basically an Arya jewel. Also traditional, sometimes we have, you know, and the Dharma jewel, you can have a text, right? Or above. If you have a statue of the Buddha, then a little bit above you have a text, if that's possible. Or a little bit higher than the Buddha is sitting, you can put a text for auspiciousness. Right? And if you want to be a real traditional person, then you can also put a little bit of a stupa. You know stupa?
Yeah.
Or an image of a stupa representing the mind of the Buddha. So then you not only have the three jewels, but also the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha represented in your altar. And so you have an image of the Buddha, you have a text representing the speech. Yeah, so the image of the Buddha is the qualification of the body of the Buddha, right? As well as being the Buddha jewel as a Sangha jewel. Yeah. And then you have a little text, a little bit higher than the Buddha is sitting. Yeah? And then a stupa or an image of a stupa. And it can be a picture, it can be quite easy. When I do a retreat somewhere like last time in Nepal, a very remote area, I just carry a picture or something. You know? Yeah. The main thing is, of course, our mental attitude. Milarepa didn't let anything in the cave. But for us, it helps, you know. If you have something on the altar, it inspires. You know, that's the power of the object. So that's why we have images. And that's why I thought maybe we elaborate our altar a little bit more, getting more images or statues of the lineage we come from. You know, that's why we have this project. So it's inspiring. Because sometimes if you look at the image of a Buddha or you know, if you have a teacher or something and there's a connection, then it inspires. And this inspiration generates faith based on reasoning. It is different types of faith. Yeah. So the faith we're talking about here is I think we translate as clearing faith or clarifying faith. If you look at an image with understanding the qualities, it brings a kind of clarity to the mind. You know. Yeah. So that's why we have an altar. You know? And that's that's based. And the more you understand the qualities of that, what represents the Buddha, or that represents the mind of the Buddha, or that represents the Dharma in the form of a text, or that is the Sangha jewel, you know. So the more you understand that, so as a Buddhist practitioner, when we wake up in the morning, you know, wash your face and, you know, clean the room and make prostrations and make offerings, it's all for this purpose, to generate those qualities yourself in the future. Yeah, so that's the Sangha jewel is the Buddha himself, basically. But you can also have other images of you know, there's also images of the Arhats or something like that. You can make it as elaborate as you want, yeah. But if you have simple and you just have the Buddha there, then that represents basically all the three jewels as well, because the form is the Buddha jewel, right? Being an Arya being is the Sangha jewel, yeah, and his speech of the Dharma is the Dharma jewel, right? So, yeah. you can make it as lively as you want with different attributes that helps you to understand more about its rituals. Yeah. Yeah, is that enough?
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, perfect timing. All right. Thank you so much for your interest in the Buddha Dharma. And then, yeah, maybe we'll meet again. Yeah, that's always, you never know, you know, you never know. You think we take for granted we see each other again, maybe over Zoom or in a more reality here in the temple one day. But yeah, so yeah, so next weekend I think there's something with, what do we do? Oh yeah, the Vajrayana Sutra. So there's emptiness all the way. I mean, it's a very inspiring text. And I have to do a few other courses with other centers. And then we have a break in August, and then we meet Discovering Buddhism again in September, right? Yeah, and those who do or planning to do the basic program, then we're gonna meet more, because that's also once a month starting in September. Yeah, so yeah, enjoy your break if I don't see you before that, and otherwise. And we're gonna do some prayers again with Friday. It's kind of the wheel turning day. It's kind of the time that the Buddha taught the teaching. It's coming up on Friday. So that's why we do some practices on Friday as well. Yeah, anyway, so to see you maybe, in September or earlier, right? Okay, merci beaucoup, thank you so much. And then, make some dedications or prayers for the benefits of spreading of the Buddha Dharma in all directions. That these teachings, you know, may generate a virtuous state of minds and all beings in order to generate causes for happiness. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a second one. Anyway, we do it for a second. Dagi jin saba gewadi tendando agundangam. Geva jason lozan drabai tembe nimbo rindo sache. And then also for the long and healthy life of the teachers, like Geshe Tenzin Namdak, giving incredible examples, and may all the holy wishes spontaneously fulfilled. Garera we gore singamso pendon dewa malu jungwe chenre zegwan tenzin gyalso jabe shite padu thank you, as well as Lama Zopa Rinpoche being the spiritual director, founder and director of this organization, and as well as all the teachers you have a connection with. I pray for long and healthy life and accomplishments, or because the wish to be spontaneously fulfilled. To the Zam Chen Yang Yen Yawe Tenzin Yong Bawe Gun Zen Da Po Zi Jo Song Gor Be Leng Ba Ha Da Zo Dun Je Gong Dun Sham Den Shang. And then for oneself and all sentient beings to generate the principal aspect of the mind. Yeah, and in regards with those three principal aspects, we have the three refuges also, you know. Take refuge in the generation of initiation. You can think like that. So take refuge in the generation of bodhicitta. And in order to eliminate all afflictions, and those two aspects of training for the state of self-liberation or enlightenment, we need emptiness, you know. So also generate, pray for that. So first, initiation. Ngejun Samba Rinpoche Magye Pana Gegyoji Yeba Nyamba Meba Yangone Gone Baba Bodhicitta Janjo Semcho Rinpoche Magye Pana Gegyoji Yeba Nyamba Meba Yangone Gone Baba. And then emptiness. Tony Tawa Rinpoche Magye Pana Gegyoji Yeba Nyamba Meba Yangone Gone Baba. And then think that oneself making the prayer itself, and the aim we pray towards too, or the result, is all in the nature of interdependence and empty of inherent existence, and that's also why the prayer will come true. And then we pray for all future lifetimes and every part from these precious instructions and the masters, and quickly progress on the stages of grounds and paths and achieve the state of Vajrayana. Gewa Gunde Yanda Lama Dan Dame Jedam Sadan Lamgi Yanda Rabza Doje Changi Koba. All right, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. The sun is coming back, so yeah, have fun, I would say, and then see you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Ja, merci beaucoup. Thank you, dankjewel. Hartelijk bedankt. That's two same in Dutch, but yeah.
Okay.
Vielen Dank. I don't know if you speak German. Okay, bye. Yeah.